Some stories don't begin with thunder or lightning. Sometimes they begin with silence, the kind that presses against your chest until you can hardly breathe. For me, it began with a storm inside my ribs. I stood in the principal's office of Willow Ridge Elementary, my palms trembling, trying to steady the tears burning behind my eyes. Across from me sat two parents, perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect judgment. They looked at me like I was something sticky on the bottom of their designer shoes. Their smiles were polite, but sharp, cold, and the silence in that room told me everything I needed to know. To them, I wasn't a mother defending her child. I was a failure in a cardigan, a woman without a husband, without value. But this story doesn't begin there. That moment, the humiliation, the fury, that was just the spark that lit everything else on fire. To understand how I got there, you have to go back years, before the heartbreak, before the anger, before I became who I am. My name is Harper Langston. I'm 38 years old, and for most of my life, I thought strength meant silence. When I was 13, I learned that love could vanish overnight. My father, Daniel, walked out on my mother, Elise, after 15 years of marriage. I remember that morning vividly. The open envelope on the kitchen table, my mother's trembling hands, the hotel receipt tucked between unpaid bills. He didn't just cheat, he replaced us. One day he was my hero. The next, a stranger. He left us with debt, confusion, and a silence that stretched through the walls like a disease. My mother did what she always did. She survived. She took 3 jobs, wore the same coat for years, and smiled through exhaustion. She told me, "We don't need saving, Harper. We just keep walking." But behind her eyes I saw the damage. That lesson carved itself deep into me. Men leave, always. 3 years later, when Mom remarried, I was furious. His name was Richard Nolan, a calm, steady man who owned a construction company in town. He was kind, patient, and maybe too perfect. I didn't trust perfection anymore, so I froze him out, ignored his smiles, refused his help, and made sure he knew he'd never be my dad. He offered to pay for my college. I took loans instead. He called on my birthdays. I never picked up. The walls were already built. At 18, I packed my bags and walked out. I thought independence meant freedom. What I didn't realize was that it also meant loneliness. The next few years were a blur of waitressing jobs, late nights, and small dreams I didn't dare chase. Then came Liam. He was 25, a freelance graphic designer who talked about art and life, and dreams like they were just waiting for us to grab them. He saw me, really saw me, when I felt invisible. He told me I was beautiful even when I smelled like coffee and exhaustion. 6 months later, we moved in together. 2 years later, I was pregnant. For a moment, I thought maybe the curse had broken. Maybe some loves really did stay. But hope is a fragile thing. As my belly grew, Liam's affection faded. He stopped coming home for dinner, stopped touching my hand in public. His eyes wandered long before his body did. By the 7th month, I found the messages, the late-night texts, the pictures, the excuses. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. "You've changed," he said coldly. "You're just not fun anymore." He packed a bag and left, half-empty suitcase, full of self-pity. 6 weeks later, my daughter, Ella, was born. He never came. Never called. Never sent a single dollar. That was lesson number 2. Men always leave, and they don't look back. I raised Ella alone in a small apartment above a bakery in Brookvale, a quiet coastal town that smelled like salt and cinnamon. I worked mornings at the cafe, nights doing bookkeeping for a local shop. Every cent mattered, but every smile from my little girl made it worth it. Ella was quiet but creative, the kind of kid who saw beauty in things most people ignored. She loved painting butterflies, collecting shells, writing tiny poems on scraps of paper. She was my whole world. When she turned 10, things started to change. She'd come home from school quieter than usual, her eyes glassy, her voice brittle. When I asked what was wrong, she'd shrug and say, "Nothing. Mom, just tired, but mothers always know." Eventually, it came out in pieces. Whispered confessions over dinner, half sentences before bed. A girl at school, Ava Denton, had started teasing her. It began small. A snide comment here, a laugh there, but it grew darker, meaner. You don't have a dad because your mom's broken. She probably scared him away. No wonder nobody wants you. Each insult was a knife, and my daughter carried those blades home in silence. Ava's parents, Ethan and Veronica Denton, were wealthy and smug, the kind of people who believed that status made them righteous. Her father was a lawyer. Her mother ran the town's social committee. Everyone bowed when they walked into a room. Everyone except me. One evening, Ella came home with her art project in ruins, a clay butterfly she'd spent weeks sculpting for the school fair. It lay in pieces in her backpack, wings shattered. When I asked what happened, she just sobbed. Ava said girls without dads don't deserve to win anything. Something broke in me that day, the same way my daughter's sculpture had. I wanted to storm into that school and scream until someone listened. But I didn't. I told myself to stay calm, to trust the system. I didn't realize the system was built for people like the Dentons. 2 days later, it happened. Ava pushed Ella in front of other students, taunting her again. Ella, trembling, pushed back. Ava fell, scraped her knee, and ran crying to the teacher. By morning, my phone rang. "Miss Langston," Principal Graham said stiffly, "we need to discuss an incident involving your daughter." When I walked into that office, I already knew how it would go. The Dentons were there, seated neatly, like a royal audience awaiting a confession. Principal Graham sat behind his desk, avoiding my eyes. I tried to explain. About the bullying, the name-calling, the art project. I showed screenshots of messages Ella had sent me, begging to stay home. But before I could finish, Veronica Denton cut me off. "Enough," she said, her voice like ice. "Your daughter attacked mine. We're lucky she wasn't seriously hurt. She was defending herself," I said quietly, trying to steady my voice. Veronica leaned forward, her lips curving into a cruel smile. "Children without structure act out, Miss Langston. No father figure, just you. It's sad, really. Some women just aren't meant to raise children alone." The words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I felt my throat tighten, my palms shake. Her husband slid a paper across the desk. "We can keep this off record if you sign this. A statement admitting your responsibility for Ella's behavioral issues." I looked down. It wasn't a report. It was a confession, a document saying I was a bad mother. Even the principal looked uncomfortable, but he said softly, "Until you sign, Ella will remain suspended." Suspended. For defending herself. I walked out of that office numb. My vision blurred as I reached my car. I sat there for an hour, hands shaking against the steering wheel, trying to breathe. When I finally got home, Ella was waiting on the couch, eyes red and swollen. She looked at me and whispered, "Mommy, am I bad? Ava said I don't have a dad because you're not a good woman. Is that true?" That sentence cut deeper than anything the Dentons had said. That night, after I tucked her into bed, I sat in the kitchen staring at my phone, at a contact I hadn't touched in 20 years. Richard Nolan, the man who'd tried to love me when I was too angry to let him. The man who had sent birthday cards I'd never opened. The man who had always said, "You'll always have a home, Harper." My hands trembled as I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Harper?" His voice was older, slower, but still steady. For a second I couldn't speak. Then everything poured out. The bullying, the humiliation, the Denton's threats, my daughter's tears. There was a long silence. Then Richard said quietly, "Harper, listen to me. You haven't failed. They have. You are my daughter, and Ella is my granddaughter. Do not sign anything. Do not talk to anyone else. I'll be there in the morning." "I don't want your money," I began. "This isn't about money," he interrupted firmly. "It's about family, and this family doesn't abandon its own." When I hung up, I burst into tears, the kind I hadn't cried in years. For the first time in my adult life, I let someone else hold the weight. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying every cruel word, every look of pity, every smug smirk in that office. But for the first time in a long time, I also felt something else, hope. The next morning, at 8:55 a.m., I stood outside the school's glass doors, heart pounding. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and there he was. Richard stepped out in a tailored gray suit, tall and calm, silver at his temples, strength in every movement. He looked like a man who didn't raise his voice because he never had to. When he saw me, his expression softened. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Let's go take care of this," he said simply. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, the sun rose over the small town of Evermere, painting the sky in gentle streaks of rose and gold. Harper barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter's tear-streaked face and heard the echo of that small, trembling voice. "Mommy, why doesn't my daddy protect me?" She had thought she was done crying. She was wrong. At 7:42 a.m., a sleek black car rolled quietly up the curb in front of her house. Its engine purred like confidence itself. Harper stood frozen at the window, clutching her mug of cold coffee. She hadn't seen William in 20 years, 2 entire decades of silence, pride, and stubborn hurt. When the door opened and he stepped out, time folded in on itself. William Lockhart still looked formidable. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a dark suit that seemed to belong on magazine covers. But his eyes, the soft gray eyes that once watched her grow up, held something gentler. A sadness, maybe, or love that never faded. Harper opened the door before he could knock. Neither spoke at first. The years hung thick between them. "Hi," she managed. "Hi, Harper," he said quietly. "You look just like your mother did when she was your age." Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to come all this way." He smiled faintly. "You called me. That's all the reason I need." Behind her, Martha peeked around the corner, wide-eyed. Harper beckoned her forward. "Martha, this is your grandpa." William crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "I've waited a long time to meet you, sweetheart." Martha's small hand reached for his, hesitant but trusting. "Mom says you help people," he nodded. "That's what family does." Something broke softly inside Harper. She turned away, pretending to fix her bag, but her eyes glistened. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. By 9 a.m., the 3 of them arrived at Evermere Academy. The same pristine lawn, the same smug cars in the parking lot. But this time Harper didn't tremble. William's presence beside her felt like armor. Principal Harrison was waiting outside his office, straightening his tie when he saw William. "Mr. Lockhart," he stammered. I didn't expect—" William's tone was calm, measured. "I'm sure you didn't. But when I heard how my granddaughter was treated, I thought it best to address it in person." The principal swallowed hard. "Please, come in." Inside the office, Andrew and Amber Denton sat stiffly. Amanda perched between them, her eyes red but calculating. Amber clutched her designer purse like it was a shield. Harper felt her stomach twist, but William's gentle nod steadied her. "Let's begin," he said, taking the seat beside her. Principal Harrison cleared his throat. "As I mentioned, we have a disciplinary issue involving both children." William raised a hand slightly. "Before we discuss discipline, I'd like to see the incident report, the teacher statements, and any video footage available." The room went silent. Amber blinked. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" William turned to her, his expression smooth but cutting. "William Lockhart. I fund your daughter's private violin program, the school's literacy grant, and 3 scholarships for students who can't afford to be here. I also happen to be a grandfather who does not tolerate injustice." Amber's lips parted, then closed again. Principal Harrison quickly handed over a folder. William flipped through it, scanning every page. "Interesting," he murmured. "You've documented Martha pushing Amanda, but not the repeated incidents of verbal abuse leading up to it." Amber huffed. "Verbal abuse, please?" Amanda was just teasing. Children do that. William's eyes lifted, gray and steady. Mocking a child for not having a father, destroying her art project, spreading lies. You call that teasing? I call it emotional cruelty. The principal shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Lockhart, perhaps we should—" "No," William said sharply, still calm but unyielding. "You will listen." Because what happened here is a reflection of this school's values, or lack thereof. Harper had never seen anyone command a room like that. Even the air seemed to pause. He continued, "You pressured a single mother to sign a written confession, a humiliation designed to shift blame from the aggressor to the victim. That ends today." Andrew Denton's face reddened. "Now hold on, our daughter was pushed." "That's assault," William's eyebrow arched. "Assault? Then perhaps we should review the full footage, which I imagine you've already seen. I'd also like to involve the Board of Education, the press, and my legal team. I'm sure they'd love to explore how this institution treats children based on their parents' marital status." Silence dropped like a curtain. Amber's voice quivered. We don't need to make this public." "I agree," William said smoothly. "Then here's what will happen. Amanda will issue a written and verbal apology to Martha. The school will remove all disciplinary action from her record. Principal Harrison will apologize to Ms. Hayes," he gestured toward Harper, "for his inappropriate treatment of her and her child, and Amanda will enroll in the anti-bullying and empathy program you already have on file." Principal Harrison swallowed. "That's reasonable." Amber opened her mouth to argue, but her husband squeezed her wrist. "It's over," he muttered. "Just do it." Harper sat frozen, her heart pounding. William leaned back, satisfied. "Good, then we're done here." He turned to Harper, his voice softening. "Let's go home." Outside, the autumn air felt lighter. Harper took a deep breath, her shoulders trembling as if releasing years of pain. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to," William said gently. "You did the hardest thing. You asked for help." Her voice cracked. "I thought you'd hate me for calling after all these years." He smiled faintly. "Harper, I could never hate you. You were hurt. You were protecting yourself. But family isn't about perfection. It's about presence." Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. She didn't hide them this time. "Thank you." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Thank Martha. She reminded you that love doesn't vanish. It just waits to be let back in." Martha ran ahead toward the car, spinning her arms in the crisp air. "Mom, Grandpa, can we get ice cream?" Harper laughed through her tears. "At 10 in the morning?" William chuckled. "Why not? Justice deserves a celebration." They climbed into the car, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Harper's heart was light. That afternoon, the story of what happened spread quietly through Evermere Academy. Parents whispered, teachers nodded, and some even smiled. Because deep down, everyone knew Harper Hayes had been wronged. And finally, someone had stood up to the Dentons. When William dropped them home, he didn't rush to leave. He joined them for lunch, grilled cheese and tomato soup, the same simple meal Clara used to make. The warmth of it filled the kitchen. Martha chatted endlessly about her new art project. Harper watched her daughter's laughter bounce off the walls, filling the cracks she hadn't realized were still there. William glanced around the cozy, imperfect home and smiled. "You've built something beautiful here, Harper. You and Martha both." She looked at him, really looked this time, the man she'd once refused to trust, the man who never stopped caring. "Do you think Mom would be proud of me?" she asked softly. William's voice trembled. "She already is, and so am I." Harper reached across the table and took his hand. For the first time in 20 years, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was healing. That night, after Martha went to bed, Harper sat by the window. The street outside was quiet, bathed in the silver glow of the moon. She thought of Michael, the man who left when things got hard. And she thought of William, the man who showed up when everything fell apart. The difference was everything. She whispered into the stillness, as if speaking to her younger self. "You were never unworthy. You were just waiting for someone to stay." In the other room, Martha's soft breathing was the only sound. Harper smiled faintly, a tear glistening down her cheek. Love had found its way back, not through romance, but through family, courage, and grace. And for the first time in decades, Harper knew. She was home.